Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Cornerstone, the show where we attempt to navigate our culture through a biblical lens. My name is Shane Kai. I'm your host. And yeah, I am aware it's been a rough month or two, even. I believe that I mentioned all of the context for the last 2 months, but in case you missed it, I will say it again. It started when I had my younger sister's wedding back in early May, and because it was towards the weekend, I was unable to record an episode because things were just busy and crazy. You know how weddings are. And then a few days after the wedding, they approached me, my sister and my now brother-in-law. They approached me and they said, hey, we need someone to watch over our apartment while we're gone on our honeymoon at an undisclosed location. So would you mind watching the apartment? So I was living there for about 2.5 weeks, and I forgot to close my window because of the noise. Give me a second. I was living there for 2 weeks, and I tried to make an episode of Cornerstone, but I did actually make an episode. That's what last episode was. Last episode, titled Space is Cool, was recorded at that apartment. And now, even though I'm recording today, next week I'm going to another wedding in another undisclosed location, and I don't know if I'm going to make another episode that week. So what I want to do is, over that weekend, which is next weekend, I want to make a bunch of episodes and record them all at once and then release them periodically, or just release them all at once to kind of make up for the lost time that I've had in the last 2 months. So if that ends up coming to fruition, then that'll be great for you guys. You'll get multiple videos in 1 week, and you guys will all be happy. And I will feel a little bit more accomplished and feel a little bit better about myself because I missed a bunch of weeks. So speaking of last episode, the Space is Cool episode, can someone explain to me what's going on? That video has accrued almost 200 views, and 200's a large number for me. You have to keep in mind, because I have less than a quarter of that many subscribers. So usually what happens is, when I release a video on the first day, it's only getting like 5 to 8 views. Nothing crazy. Then by day 2 and day 3, the majority of the viewers who watch my videos come back and watch the video. And so around day 3 is when my video hits 25 to 30 views. That's usually what I'm averaging. And just so we're clear, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. I don't mind at all. I'm not doing this for the views. I'm not doing this for money. None of my videos are monetized, obviously, because, well, I mean, look at how small I am at this point. If in the future I do have the option to monetize my videos, I don't know if I will. I might, or at the very least, maybe I'll do sponsors, but I don't know if I will ever monetize my videos and receive an income from YouTube directly. So just so we're clear, I'm not like trying really hard to get as many views as possible. I'm not like focusing solely on that. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, if I get a lot of views, that's great. That's awesome. But that's not the goal, you know. That's like a secondary nice thing, you know. So that's just what I'm paying attention to. I'm paying attention to my analytics. I'm paying attention to how many days it takes to get to my average view count. And the average view count before was about 30 views. The last video received about 30 views in the first day that I uploaded it, right? So I recorded it at like 7 p.m. and then I just sat down and edited the whole thing, and then I uploaded it that same night. And then the next day, or like over the course of the next morning to night, that's when it accrued about 30 views. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, huh, that's kind of interesting. It got 30 views in the first day, usually only... My SD card just broke, and now I can't put it in my camera. And I don't want to risk jamming it in there because, well, the last time that happened, I had to throw away a camera. So I need to go, oh wait, here's the piece that broke off. This little thing right here is what is keeping me from putting my SD card back into my camera. So I gotta go buy another SD card and then I can continue recording. So I will be back at some point today. It might be night, I don't know, but stay tuned, I guess. Got it. All right, so I'm back 2 hours later, and I'm ready to record again. What was I talking about before? Oh yeah, the analytics. So basically, my previous video got 20 views in like the first day, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. Next day had 30 views. Next day after that had 40, and I was like, huh, okay. And by the fifth day, it had about 55 views. And that's important because my first video in this series has 55 views. And that was uploaded 4 months ago. And my newest video got 55 views in 5 days. And I think I did a little post on Instagram. I was just like, hey, look at this. That's pretty cool. It is now currently, let me check. It is now officially at 202 views. And I posted it 12 days ago. And I've gained 3 subscribers since posting that video. How? Like, can someone explain that to me, please? Like, I'm almost like not excited because I feel like what's going to happen is I'm going to upload this video and it's going to get 20 views after 5 days again. And it's not going to do anything. I feel like that's just going to be a one-time thing. Because that's happened to me before where I've uploaded like one video and it gets like 200 views. And then the next video I upload gets like 10, you know? So it's just... I'm wondering, that's probably what's going to happen here, but I'm just like, oh, hoping it's not. Hoping it carries out a little bit, you know? Even if this video doesn't get 200 and it only gets like 50 or 75, you know, I'm cool with that. That's fine with me. All that to say, thank you for anyone who watched last episode and maybe is new to the channel and subscribing from it. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm just glad to have you here. I'm glad that you are willing to be open-minded and listen to someone talk about their beliefs and their opinions. And listen, I love open dialogue. I love talking to people. So if you want to share your belief constructively and respectfully, we can talk in the comments, and that'd be a lot of fun. I love doing that. That being said, if you're going to act like a jerk and not be respectful in the comments, I'm not going to talk to you. So just be respectful, be constructive, have humility. So today's episode, I wanted to finally fulfill what I said I was going to do a few weeks ago, which is talk about the DC Extended Universe. One of my more recent episodes, I talked about all of the things, or at least some of the things that I disliked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because I believe that universally, the MCU is praised while the DCU is I guess, insulted, or the opposite of praised, hated, you know, disliked. That's not to say that everybody hates the DCEU and everyone loves the MCU. So I wanted to do like a little switch up where I talk about, oh, these are things I really disliked about Marvel, and these are things that I love about the DC extended universe. So that's what I'm going to do in this episode today. Just to clarify, when I'm talking about the DC extended universe, I'm referring to movies between Man of Steel and the first Aquaman. I'm only talking about those movies because, as far as I'm aware, those were the only movies that, Zack Snyder was either involved in or planning to be involved in. I can't speak about Aquaman or Shazam. I don't know if he was actually involved in those, but I'm just going to include those in there for the sake of it. I'm not including movies like Birds of Prey, Aquaman 2, The Flash, but I'm not including those movies because they're not really part of Zack Snyder's universe that was passed when Zack Snyder was kicked off. So I'm just talking about Snyder's stuff and what I really liked about it. Okay, so number one, I think one of the huge things that people disliked about Zack Snyder's, or the Snyderverse, so to speak, was the release structure. How, Man of Steel was the first movie, and the second, well, I guess this is going to be flipped. You should do it here. Man of Steel was the first movie, and then Batman v Superman was the second one, and then they went straight into Justice League afterwards. Like, that release structure is not good. They're saying, that would be the equivalent of Marvel doing like an Iron Man movie, then going straight into Civil War, and then after Civil War going into Avengers or whatever. It's not really a very well thought out structure. And I definitely agree with that, but I'm not here to talk about the dislikes. I'm here to talk about the likes. So what I want to say about Zack Snyder, I really liked his vision. I really enjoyed where he was kind of adapting the Justice League into film. And especially after watching the Snyder cut of Justice League, I really enjoyed what he was trying to do. I personally loved the idea that at the end of the Snyderverse and even parts of Batman v Superman were teasing this eventual future where Darkseid has conquered the world and Superman is now evil and Batman has to like lead some kind of underground resistance in the desert. Like that was a really cool concept. I absolutely love that. I'm not saying that Snyder created it. I'm sure it's based on a pre-existing comic or TV show or whatever. But I just love that he was trying to adapt that into film or do that in film. It's just so wildly different than anything in the MCU where you're just teasing, you're having like, instead of flashbacks, you're having flash forwards into an apocalyptic future, no pun intended. And it was really cool. And I really liked the setup that they did for it in Batman v Superman with Flash showing up to Bruce Wayne in almost like a dream sequence. It's kind of a dream sequence, but it's also like it did actually happen where he gets like, he's like pulled out of the Speed Force for a second and he's like trying to communicate with Bruce. Like that whole moment was just very unique. And I don't know. I just love that. I love that scene. I think that's the coolest part of the whole movie. I'm not going to lie. I really do think that is the coolest part, even better than the Batman warehouse scene. It's such a cool vision. It's just such a cool way to set up your universe. Completely different than what Marvel was doing. Marvel was trying to do everything in the present day, set up this big battle and have the big battle tease a villain that comes a little bit later and then keep doing stuff in the present day to eventually lead up to that big battle and start connecting the dots and connecting the Infinity Stones and things like that. It was very structured and it was very well thought out. And I'm not saying that what MCU was, pales in comparison to what Snyder did. While I did like Snyder's vision, the MCU structure is, I would say, objectively better. There's just something so cinematically intriguing about Snyder's vision of setting up this future with flash forwards, and the future is so vastly different than the present day. I don't know. It was just very cool, very interesting. I loved that part of those movies, and I really wish we could have seen the rest of it come to fruition, but alas, we did not. One thing I loved about the Snyder cut of Justice League was seeing some of the integral characters of the Justice League and how the world perceives them. I thought that the way that the world perceived these characters was all very interesting and very different than what the MCU has ever done before. Personally, I love it's a very small detail, very tiny detail in the overall scheme of the Justice League film. I loved that to the small fishing colony, Aquaman was seen as some kind of deity. And it's a very small detail when the woman grabs the sweatshirt and smells it and cherishes it. It's kind of a weird scene because you're like, ugh, is she smelling his shirt or whatever? But it speaks a really cool and interesting concept of how Arthur Curry is seen as a god to these people. And just, I don't know, it was a really cool character moment. It was a really cool character moment for that, just to see how the everyday people react to these powered people being among them. And that's something the MCU doesn't do too often. They've done it before, but the MCU just doesn't focus too much on the general public's perception of the heroes. And if you want to debate me on that and say oh, actually I do believe that they do this, and here's a bunch of examples of the MCU treating the general public as a valid perception and why I think it's good, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. I'm more than welcome to debate with people, again, as long as it's constructive and respectful. With Cyborg, I loved that Cyborg, I forget the real guy's name, not the actor's name, although I do forget the actor's name too. I'm talking about the character's name. I love that Cyborg had a bad relationship with his dad, and I really enjoyed the monologue that his dad recorded for him. That was one of the parts of the movie where I cried, where I was like, this is such a powerful monologue by his dad. He's talking about how, your life is going to be difficult from now on. You're going to have the power to steal all the money in the world. You're going to have the power to destroy the entire civilization of the planet with your nuclear codes. You're going to have the power to do all of this crazy stuff. But that's not the difficult part. The difficulty is going to not do that. The difficult part is going to be the difficult part of your life is not going to be releasing the nuke. The difficulty is going to be choosing not to release the nuke. And obviously I'm not saying it perfectly. I'm kind of paraphrasing it, and the way they do it in the movie is much better, but I loved that monologue. Such a fantastic monologue. And with him wanting to help the woman at the ATM, that was such a powerful scene. I absolutely loved that. And in a way, scenes like what I mentioned with Aquaman and with Cyborg, with the way that Snyder was telling the story with these characters, it feels so much more cinematic than what the MCU has ever done. I will admit that with one thing. The MCU at times doesn't feel very cinematic. It feels kind of made for TV sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes they have some real shining moments in cinema, but a lot of the MCU feels like made for TV storytelling and made for TV characters. But I think that the Snyderverse I think that what he was starting with Cyborg and with Arthur Curry, I think that I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so cinematic and it was so powerful. It really got me more interested in the characters like immediately, even more than what Joss Whedon attempted to do. Now, that's not to say that it runs with every character. And I say runs as a joke because one character that doesn't really perform very well with character, I would say, is Ezra Miller's The Flash. I think him as Barry Allen, I think, is okay. You know, his relationship with his father in prison, and he's trying to prove to the world that his father is not the murderer, and his dad is like, no, don't waste your time on me. I'm a lost cause. Just go live your life, be successful. That's interesting. It's not as unique because I've heard that story plenty of times in other Flash media, but it's still cool. His character as the Flash, though, was not very convincing. It wasn't very interesting. There were a lot of times when I was watching the movie when, like, I felt like I was getting pulled out of the movie and the fourth wall was breaking because there were so many things I was seeing. I'm like, wait, what? Why is he doing this? Why is it that happen? How do you explain this? You know, and it's just, I'm sure there's probably plenty of videos out there that kind of dive into why the Flash's representation in the Snyder Cut of Justice League wasn't very good. But like I said, I liked Barry Allen in that movie, but the Flash, not so much. Another thing about the Snyderverse I really enjoyed, which is kind of piggybacking off of what I said before, where I said I liked his vision. I liked that outside of the Justice League, there were other things that Snyder was kind of setting up and teasing that we probably wouldn't get answers for right away. But I think in the future, if we had let him actually evolve these characters and continue making movies, we probably would have gotten answers for eventually. One of the biggest ones was Bruce Wayne having a mannequin with like a pedestal of Robin's uniform with it spray painted saying "Joke's on you, Batman" or whatever. That was a very cool moment. I loved that. Even if, you know, people were upset that it didn't really go anywhere or the answer was kind of misleading or not interesting, I think that maybe it could have been done a little bit better, sure, but I think I really loved that. I really loved that they, you know, just outright teased the fact that this Batman has had a Robin before and that Robin died. And I loved that, you know, the Robin uniform was completely different than anything we'd ever seen. Like that Robin even, I think he had a scythe too. Like that was pretty crazy. And, you know, the implication that the Joker killed him, that not only implies that the Joker is in this universe, but also that the Joker has existed for a while and they've had a long running standoff and he eventually killed Robin. Whether or not Snyder intended Jared Leto's Joker to be the Joker he would eventually introduce, I don't know. But I would think not, because I can't see Snyder being like, oh yeah, that Jared Leto Joker, that was a good idea. I don't think he did that. That's just my opinion. I just really liked that vision. Loved it. Loved the little tease for that. Another thing I like about the Snyderverse is the color grading. This is more of just like an editing thing. I just liked that the movie was much darker in like grading and in like feel and vibe. I know a lot of people, when the Snyderverse was coming out, they were unironically saying, oh, the DCEU is so much darker than the MCU. They're not afraid to kill people and stuff like that. And they're like basically just edgelords, right? Who are just praising the DCEU for being dark. I wouldn't really go that far, but I would say that, like, just from an editing perspective, it definitely was darker because, you know, the color grading and all that. And I loved that. I really liked that the movies weren't so brightly lit and that you could see everything. Again, you know, something that I have said for a while is that your movie will look so much more cinematic when you get the color black correct. If you can't get the color black correct, your movie is going to look a lot more flat and there's not going to be as much depth. And that's the one thing I don't like about a lot of the scenes in Winter Soldier. I know everyone praises Winter Soldier for being a fantastic movie, and it is. I'm not going to argue with them. But there are a lot of shots in that movie where the color black is just so diluted. It makes the movie look so flat. It makes everything look gray. Everything just looks gray. It looks kind of like a raw file, if you know what that means. I'm not going to explain it to you if you don't. But I just think that you really got to color grade the color black correctly. You got to get that black. It's got to be deep. And it's got to look like a void. If you can get the black to look like a void, then that's where you're good. And I think that the Snyderverse was really color graded correctly, especially in the Snyder cut of JL and BVS. I think that the black in that movie just looked fantastic. Not a dull moment on screen, not a gray moment, nothing like that. It was just great. And then I guess the last thing I'll say before I wrap this up, I'm sure there's plenty of other things I can say about what I loved about this, this universe, but I really liked the concept of them introducing Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman. I think that helped a lot. That's not really something the MCU ever did. They didn't introduce a huge mainline character in a movie where they weren't initially promoted to be in it. Like they wasn't marketed for it. I think there were some trailers where you could see a character that kind of resembled Wonder Woman a little bit, but it wasn't like really marketed towards like, oh, this is Wonder Woman. So it's kind of surprising, like at the end of the movie, like she just shows up and you're like, oh, Wonder Woman's in this movie. And it was dope. I think it was a really good way of introducing Wonder Woman into the universe before giving her a solo entry in the chronological structure. I kind of wish they did that for more characters. I wish that the Flash and Cyborg were given more concrete entries into this universe before Justice League came out. But that's neither here nor there. Like I said, I just really enjoyed that Wonder Woman was just in there right at the end, with a lot of teasing beforehand, of course. There was I think she was in the movie throughout. She just didn't actually be Wonder Woman until the very end. And then, I just love that. I thought that was really good, really solid character moment. So yeah, those are some things I really enjoyed from the DC Extended Universe. A lot of people hate it, and trust me, rightfully so. The DC Extended Universe is not fantastic, but I think there are good things within it that should be praised and should be paid attention to. And likewise, I think the MCU is fantastic, but there's a lot of negatives about it that we should pay attention to, and we should call them out for it. And that's kind of what these two episodes were meant to do, take down Marvel, when everyone's trying to praise it, but also boost up the DCEU when everyone's trying to hate on it, because there are goods and bads to both, and I think we should talk about them more. So that's really the end of this topic. So let's go ahead and go into a time in the Word. We're going to do Psalm chapter 3, verse 5 through 8. I'm reading from the New King James Version. It says, I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is upon your people. I think this is just a cool, battle cry, almost. Just reminder that we are not meant to be afraid of people. We are not meant to be afraid of the physical war that is happening on this planet. That is not what brings us fear. Really, we shouldn't be afraid of anything. But the point is, there's another verse. I could probably look it up because I don't know where it is in the Bible. I should know where it is in the Bible because it's a really popular one. It is Ephesians 6:12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. I feel like that kind of coincides with Psalm chapter 3, verse 6. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. I am not to be afraid of the people. The people can't touch me at all. Sure, they can hurt me physically. They can break my body. They can throw me in prison for 40 years. They can insult me all they want. They can segregate me from the rest of the universe. They can do all they want, but they're never going to touch my soul and my spirit. They cannot touch that. Ever. No matter how hard they try, because I'm guarded by the Holy Spirit of the Lord. So it's kind of a good reminder. Hey, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people. And the reason why it says 10,000s is to just kind of put into context the magnitude of how much we are not to be afraid. If it just said, like, I will not be afraid of 10 people, it wouldn't feel that powerful. But 10,000s of people, even 10,000s of people, and it has an S at the end of 1,000 to imply that it's multiples of 10,000. So it's not just 10,000, it's tens of thousands. So it could be 90,000, it could be 100,000, right? I will not be afraid of tens of thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Because what is there to be afraid of? I can die, but to die is gain. Sure, I can be beheaded. I can be a social outcast. But God doesn't care about any of those things. God cares about the salvation of the soul. We are not meant to be afraid of people and what people can do to us in the physical realm, because there is nothing they can do to hurt us. Even if they killed us, broke our body, our souls and our spirits are separate from the body. And that is something that they cannot harm. They can't. It's impossible. We could die. Hopefully we don't, but we could die at the hands of man, and our soul is still safe with Christ. So why be afraid of them? Why be afraid of anything that anyone can do when we're protected, you know? So that was kind of just what I was getting at. So I don't remember if I already prayed for him as part of the prayer request. It might have been the first prayer request I ever did, on the very first episode where I just kind of introduced myself and talked about updates to my channel. But I want to pray for him again, just in case I didn't. His name is Joshua Terry. He is my good friend. If you've been following this channel as well as my second channel, The Cool Kids Table, you already know who he is. He was one of the co-hosts on the Cool Kids podcast, Josh. And he's such a great guy. He's doing a lot better now. And he is currently employed in the Navy. And he is just doing such awesome work. I've seen what he's doing, and I've kind of followed him a little bit. And it's just fantastic what he's doing right now. But we want to continue to keep him in prayer. Even when people are doing well, we continue to pray for them. Prayer does not cease when results come in. Okay, we continue to pray for people even after we realize their life is pretty good. That's just how prayer works. So I want to pray for Josh. He's in the Navy. He's, employed with the military, right? That's a very difficult job. It's very stressful, as you can probably imagine. So let's just keep Josh in our hearts, keep him in prayer. It doesn't have to be something specific. Just pray for him and pray that God will continue to strengthen him and use him in a position of leadership within the Navy. Or if he doesn't become a leader, maybe he becomes the best worker out there, the best subordinate, whatever it is. I just pray that God will use him and God will show him that he is using him. God will reveal himself to him, and Josh will just be encouraged by the Holy Spirit. So that's my prayer. And while we're at it, go ahead and pray for Peter too, because Peter did the exact same thing. Not in the Navy, he's in the Marine Corps. He's currently a Marine Special Guard stationed somewhere that I will not say. I do know where he's stationed, I'm just not going to say it. And we want to do the exact same prayer for Peter. Pray that God will continue to use him, and not only will he use him, but God will reveal himself to Peter and show him, I am using you. This is how I'm using you. This is the Lord's work. This is not your job. This is my job. You're just doing it for me. You're just lucky enough to be the one doing it, So I just pray that both of them will be used by God, and both of them will continue to be strengthened by him and encouraged by him. So that's our prayer for this week. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. And again, thank you so much for the views in the last episode. And hopefully maybe this video does just as well. I don't know. And reminder, when I reach 50 subscribers, I'm going to do something special. I actually have decided what I'm going to do. It's not like a major thing. I'm not going to host a party or anything, because it's not really like 50 subscribers isn't really the first official achievement. 100 subscribers actually is, but 50 is kind of like an in-between. I'm currently at 49, one away. I like to think that God intentionally gave me 3 extra subscribers, but not 4, because I had such an inconsistent upload for like the last 2 months. So he's like, oh, I'll get you pretty close to 50, but just one away. So maybe that's a little punishment, but I don't know. I'm joking, of course. So if you help me reach 50 subscribers, I'll do something special. I already know exactly what I'm going to do. And again, it won't be like a super special thing. It's not like a big blowout party, but it's just going to be a little extra thing that I don't usually do around here very often. So help me reach there. If you have any prayer requests, any questions for me, whether they are biblical, ethical, cultural, or just social, whatever it is, let me know down in the comment section below. I will answer them, and I might even feature them in a future episode. And if you want to talk to me, just have conversation, whether it's about the topic or about the Bible or just anything in general, again, leave it in the comment section. I love talking to people, assuming that it is constructive and assuming that it is not necessarily peaceful, but like respectful. I'm more than happy to talk to people. Those are my two conditions. It needs to be constructive and it needs to be respectful. Or at the very least, it needs to be respectful. Even if it's not constructive, that's fine. But at the very least, it needs to be respectful. I have to respect you and you have to respect me. That's just how conversation works. When you go into conversation thinking you're going to hate everybody, no one wants to talk to you all of a sudden. So just be respectful, be kind, and we can have a cool conversation. So I appreciate that. And I will see you all next week during the wedding that I'm going to, and you're going to see a bunch of new episodes in different formats, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll see y'all later. Have a blessed week.